Xbox boss Phil Spencer talks the launch of the new consoles, xCloud coming to TVs, and apparently he hates fanboys. Let's go check it out. Hello everybody and welcome back to Direckt Gaming. Thank you all for stopping by. As always, just want to give a big thanks to every single person watching this video right now. It's a pleasure to have you here on the channel, checking out what I do. If you are new here, please, I would love for you to like the video and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to know when every single video is released. The last couple of weeks have been massive and there's been so many games, the launches of new consoles. So let me know down below if you're enjoying the next Xboxes or PlayStation consoles. Let's get into an interview that was done on the Verge podcast, Decoder, with Nilay Patel. It's a really interesting chat. It's about an hour long with Phil Spencer, and he goes into some really interesting points. So I'm going to run down a few things that I thought were really interesting. He talks a lot about the launch of two consoles for the first time ever, and how they kind of wanted to make it more accessible to people who potentially couldn't afford a $500 console because it's a pretty big outlay, and how that COVID-19 has really impacted a lot of people as well, so it kind of works in their favor because they have a cheaper entry point into the next generation. He says that gaming should be growing and speaks to their goals of kind of reaching the 2 billion population in the world of gamers, including on mobile and everything like that, and how Microsoft's goal is kind of reaching the entire population of the world and how it kind of works alongside that. He also speaks a bit about working under Bill Gates and Satya Nadella and how their kind of management styles differ. And he makes a good point about how most growth that they see in the industry is per user, not necessarily the growth of the amount of people who are playing. And that's why they kind of like the idea of doing a 2 SKU launch to try and bring in new people instead of just having this demographic that he says kind of each year that goes on, the demographic ages by 1 year because it's kind of the same people. He makes a little comment about not growing prices by an extra $10 from each customer, which I don't know if that's specifically a rip against Sony, but take it as it is. And also how they've got more options to buy, like Xbox All Access, and really makes a point of saying that he wants to be all about Xbox no matter where you play. And I think that's something that they've really been working hard with PC and Xbox having more crossover between them, and with Game Pass as a service, you can play on whatever platform, and also xCloud. He also makes note that their manufacturing actually didn't start until late summer, and he said it was a little bit behind Sony's because they were waiting for specific AMD technology, which you can assume is probably some RDNA 2 features that were still kind of getting ironed out. And his biggest disappointment is just the fact that the demand is so high that not everyone can get one at launch. And this is kind of a blessing and a curse, I think, because the demand is high, so they're selling every console, but there's just too much demand and they don't have the supply to kind of counteract that. He says that there's more Series X's that were built for the launch. He predicts that the Series S will sell more going through the generation. And this doesn't surprise me, I think, once kind of the casual gamers start moving to the next platform, because, a lot of early adopters are probably the hardcore, right? The core gamer who want that best experience on an Xbox Series X, or someone who's buying a PlayStation 5 as well and they want a cheaper experience to get into next gen on the Xbox. He also says he wanted gamers to be able to kind of walk into shops or line up and buy consoles on the day, but they just obviously don't have enough to do that. But it sounds like they're just manufacturing non-stop every single day. So we should see a lot more consoles coming out over the next weeks and months as the generation kind of unfolds. More people will have their hands on them, more people will get their hands on them. What I really love about this interview, and if you want to check it out, I've linked it down below. It's on the Verge's podcast, but I've linked the Verge's article down there as well. The one thing that could push Phil out of the industry is tribalism and fanboyism, and I think this is just such a great point. He mentions the core of the core that can take it to a destructive level and kind of wants the competition to fail. And that obviously goes for Xbox gamers and PlayStation gamers. And a great quote he says is, Xbox don't need to see others fail for us to achieve our goals. And this is so in line with what I do here on the channel. I'm a massive fan of games in general. I focus almost all of my content on Xbox, but I'm not going to hate on the PlayStation fans, and he wants to break some of those tropes of the console wars, and I think that is just fantastic. Breaking down those walls. Competition is incredibly vital in this industry to kind of push innovation, and having both consoles do great things, both first parties doing great things. It's going to be an incredible time for us as players to really get the most out of these companies, because that's what we should be getting, is the best experiences, because they're pushing each other through this competition. He also mentions the lack of Halo at launch and that it is disappointing, but they wanted to make sure that it is right when it does come out. And he does mention that they're still selling every console that they build. So it brings into question, like, does a system seller, in quotes, really matter at this point? Because they're selling every console. But he does regret not having that launch flagship game, especially because they obviously built it up over years. It was going to be the first time an Xbox had launched with Halo since the original. So yeah, I think he's disappointed there, but they're still selling every console. So that is interesting. Patel also asked him about, is this the last generation of home consoles? And Phil does say no, and he doesn't agree with that. He thinks it's obviously a huge part of the industry now, but he can see, hybrid systems with part of the work done on edge computing, which, is in-home computing, and some done in the cloud. And that's what he says most will move to, with security and latency and cost should be done locally, and then enhance the experience with cloud. I think that's cool, and I think that's what they wanted to do with Crackdown. That obviously didn't pan out, and I think that maybe was kind of looking too far forward and not going to be able to deliver that back in, whenever they announced it years and years ago. He also says that you're going to see Xbox on TVs in the next 12 months, and I think this is awesome, because I like the idea of having xCloud on a phone. I like the idea of being able to play your games when you're on the go. But it also means that if they can have xCloud on TVs as a widespread thing, if they have Xbox as an app to play on a home TV, still getting that big screen experience, but without the need to actually buy a console, I think that's really cool, because Netflix, Spotify, all these services, they're available on almost every platform. They're built into TVs now. YouTube is built into TVs. And having, the ability to just be anywhere, log into the Xbox app, play your games, even when you're not at home, but you're in a hotel room and they got a smart TV, you're in an Airbnb, and you can play your Xbox games. I think this is fantastic. He also does talk a little bit about browser-based xCloud and how they're trying to, get that to happen next year as well. So good news for people wanting to play xCloud on other devices if they're not an Android user, if they want to play it on a big screen but don't want to fork out the money. They're still going to be part of Xbox's ecosystem, and that's a great solution. I think having that ability to really log into any device and play your Xbox games is a huge win for gamers. At the end, they do talk about investing in content, because they're kind of early in Game Pass and they want to invest a lot of money to get people in. He does say they've got 15 million subscribers, which is pretty incredible, and that's only going to grow, which means the library is only going to grow. He does make a point that it's kind of not the Netflix of games, because these games aren't limited to this service. They're available for retail purchase, and how small to mid-tier developers can really get known by having their games on Game Pass, and then people can still purchase those games. Those games are still often coming out in physical releases. They're on other platforms, and how these partnerships really help with getting the name out for a lot of games. There's a lot of indie games on Game Pass that I probably wouldn't have looked at, and now I advocate for them. There's some really great games there, and I'll tell people about them. They may go and buy them on another console, on a Switch, on a PC, whatever. It helps to grow, especially for those small developers and mid-sized developers. He also mentions the growth of the audience for something like EA Play, and the discovery of those games through Xbox Game Pass as well. And this is a huge company, EA, but they're seeing the benefit of having their service on Xbox as well. It's going to bring people into their games, to their ecosystem as well. They do talk a bit about how developers get paid and how they're kind of all over the place, I think was his quote, on the models of payment for different developers. And it's really interesting. But I think I'll leave it at that. What do you think about this? Have a listen to it. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you want to see xCloud come to more devices? Do you want to see it on TVs? Do you agree with the fact that I think the word he uses is despises, and he says even that's probably too small of a word for this tribalism and how he hates the fanboyism and negativity. I think it's a pretty good interview. It's about an hour long, so check it out over on the Decoder podcast, and I'll link the Verge article in the description below. That is all for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said at the start, if you like what I do, please like and subscribe, turn on notifications, hit me up on Twitter at Direckt Gaming, and I'll talk to you again soon. Until next time, peace.